Recording in progress.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the City of Sunbury Services Committee meeting for April 5th, 2023. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Capel?
Here.
Mr. Neff?
Here.
Mrs. Cooper? Here. Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to move to approve the minutes from the March 1st, 2023 meeting. Can I get a second? Second. Second by Mr. Neff. Roll call.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
3 yeas.
All right. Visitors section. We actually have a visitor tonight. So that's exciting.
It's a rare occasion.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all that often. So Greg, how do you pronounce your last name? Backers is here with Scioto Energy to present on electric and gas aggregation programs.
Thank you, everybody. We've been working with Daryl in regards to aggregation, so I put some stuff together here, but I don't know where we really want to start with this. Kind of going to recap with aggregation, talk about how it works, talk a little bit about the potential impact for those participants, and kind of the next steps that we'll have to cover in regards to electric aggregation. And then after that, we can talk about natural gas and the possibility of implementing some type of natural gas aggregation program as well. And then just open up the questions from there. I have copies. I didn't make enough. I don't know if you want to, I can go through this. I mean, it's relatively short stuff. I mean, I can make copies or email it out to the group. What's the best way you think to handle that?
We could totally take the hard copies that you have, but I always appreciate having things emailed to me as well.
Yeah, we'll do that. And then I've got an extra one here too, once I kind of go through this.
Thank you.
So as a recap, we're kind of talking about aggregation. Again, the concept behind aggregation is that a community comes together. The entity would be the city, in this case, acts as they're licensed as an aggregator to go out on behalf of the community and negotiate terms with a supplier other than utility to provide, in this case, electricity. The intent would be at a savings. That's the whole concept behind that. It was originally brought to market many years ago via natural gas. Again, it was kind of put in place by the legislators to allow this to happen, basically to kind of show that aggregation or that deregulation was working on the natural gas side. That's kind of how it started back in the 90s. The premise that it was typically sold under is that, because you're coming together as a group, you're buying in a larger bulk scenario, therefore you get a cheaper rate, which is incorrect. I mean, electricity is a traded commodity, just like wheat, corn, and soybeans, a financial product. I kind of tell people that, if you call your broker and say, hey, I want to buy a share of Microsoft, what's my cost per share? $52.50. Okay, well, I want to buy 10,000. What's my share? What's $52.50? Right. So the power is, it's based on peak and off peak. That's where you see the breaks. And there is value that aggregation does bring to the table. It is to help negotiate better terms with the suppliers on behalf of the community that sometimes in this space, folks can be taken advantage of, or there's contracts that probably aren't the best that are out there. So that's kind of where it comes in, that really a big play. That obviously, not this community, but some communities are certainly looking at utilizing this platform as a way to bring in renewables and a green portion as well. Because then that way the entire community, it's an opt-out situation, typically in aggregation, meaning that you're automatically included unless you send back a note card and say, I don't want to be included, or you can drop out at some other point in time. But typically the entire community is swept in. So that allows some of those communities that set, renewable targets, allow them to meet that. And that's been a big bonus for those communities. But that's basically aggregation in a nutshell there. Any questions on that? Make sense? So when we talk about, again, typically in Ohio, before deregulation, before Senate Bill 221, the utilities basically were, they were the providers of electricity. They owned assets. And so whatever the cost of that asset was to run and produce electricity, that's what they turn around and charge their ratepayers. And we're allowed to make money or lose money, just whatever that cost to serve was. That's the model that was implemented. When Senate Bill 221 was introduced, basically the utility, investment utilities had to divest all of their assets. They no longer held utilities themselves, didn't hold those assets. They still rolled up for a parent company, but they had to move away from, so the utility didn't own that. They couldn't do a cost of serve model. So they had to go out and procure power. They had to go out and say, okay, I have this is my customer base. I have to go out and purchase power for AEP. And they would have bidders that would come in and they would say, okay, I'm going to bid at a certain percentage of your volume at X rate. So the structure kind of changed. The utilities moved into an auction-based, more of a market-reflected rate than what they had in previous years. So in the beginning, before that was implemented, you could show significant savings for most participants that you could 25, 30, 40% sometimes in certain markets, because the cost to serve a utility is not the most efficient when it comes to purchasing versus what the market was. There was always a gap that was there. But when the utilities, again, divested the assets and they moved into this whole auction structure, now they're participating in the market. And that's what kind of, their costs kind of came down in line with where we're seeing most of the market. So the value prop for aggregation shrunk pretty quick. And from savings of, let's say, 25% down to, at best, you might be able to get 2 or 3%. So there was a lot of risk in moving forward with aggregation. It was something our firm didn't really participate in a lot, just because it was one that was risky for those making the decision on behalf of the residents. Under the skies that we're going to always save money. That won't, it's never 100% the case. So some things have changed recently, though, within the marketplace. And the utility doing their auction process, the suppliers that are participating in this auction process are basically saying that there's what we call migration risk. Customers can kind of come and go all the time. And these suppliers, have to figure out how much of that load are going to serve. 10% of 100,000 kilowatt hours is different than 10% of 1 million kilowatt hours. But they bid in at a percentage level. So they have to build in risk premiums to kind of figure out, if I have to serve 10%, that load could be here or could be here. How do I manage that financially? And so what we're starting to see now in the marketplace is that utilities costs are going through the roof. In fact, you probably recently saw an announcement from AEP that their rates coming in June are going to be significantly higher than what they have been historically. So right now, AEP's rates roughly around 7.2 cents. They're expecting that to be above 10 cents come June 1st. So that's a pretty significant bump at a time when most of us are kind of dealing with inflation as is. So this is a good time for participation in aggregation because we can go directly to the suppliers, and in the marketplace, we're seeing roughly, I would expect if we held a procurement process today, it would probably be in that 7 cent range. So that's a 3 cents difference, which equates to about $24 per month for an average user, which is about 800 kilowatt hours per year or per month. So, roughly you're getting close to almost $300 a year that you could pull off the table, assuming that the metrics that I'm using come into play. Any questions on that? Hopefully I'm not losing you guys here.
No.
We're with you.
So that's kind of what we expect if we go through a procurement process. We've been working with Daryl on that for quite a bit. We've got the city is teed up and the licenses have been renewed. You're in a position to make, you have the ability to move forward if you want. The next phase that we need to enter into is, or determine, is if we want to move forward, we can do the procurement process, which is what Coyote Energy handles as a broker. We will go out to the suppliers and basically hold an RFP saying this is the load that we have. This is, they look at all the parameters of what they want to, serving this load for the community, and they'll come back with rates. And we'll sit down and look over those rates, see what the options are in comparison to what the utilities offer, which we know is going to be roughly 10 cents. And so long as there's a delta there that's worthy of moving forward, we can move forward. And that's summing that up at a pretty simplistic level. To move forward, while June may sound like it's pretty far out, which is when AEP is changing their rates, we're unable to move in June because these suppliers require about a 60-day period to get everything, get the letters out, migrate the enrollments and all that good stuff. So at the earliest, we're looking at a July start date right now. And then what we'll do is we'll always ask for a 12-month option, 24-month option, and a 36-month option. Walk you guys through all the good, the bad, so you can kind of figure out ultimately what you feel comfortable with moving, if any of them, at that point in time. Again, the city holds the trump card. They determine if they want to move forward or not. Just by participating in this procurement process doesn't hold you to a you have to move forward. You don't. You know, we can determine if the value is worth it or not. So to safely move forward with the July 1 cycle, we really need to start. We need to have somebody selected, the procurement process completed, the analysis done, and a supplier awarded really by no later than April 28th. You might have a little bit of wiggle room after that to hit a July 1 start date, but that's about where we are right now. So obviously, here we are on the 5th. We've got the clock is ticking from that standpoint. And again, the only reason I'm trying to keep that close to June is because obviously, one, summertime is when everybody uses a lot more electricity. We know the rates are already going up June. We can't hit that date. And so, based on what we're seeing in the marketplace, $24 is on average. My guess is in the summertime, it would be quite a bit more if these folks have the ability to pull off the table from the savings standpoint. That's it. Try to sum that up as quickly as possible. Any questions about any of the information thrown out?
Honestly, don't have any questions myself. What's the ask from us tonight? I think, Steve, is
So let's talk about the blue boxes on your last page,
Okay.
page 7.
Yeah. Kind of the things that have to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Request utility data for all eligible participants. Is that an internal
That's-
request through AEP
Yeah.
to get load?
Yeah, so what we do is basically go to AEP, there's a process that has to be followed, that will go out and say, City of Sunbury, this is a certification, you need load data, they'll pull it and they'll look at, what are the zip codes that comprise the city, and they'll clean out who can participate and who can't. So the final list that I get is a list and it goes out to the suppliers, and they can determine if they want to participate or not. Yeah.
And then the RP is obviously
Right.
that key second step in that. So, and then you said that when you get to the point of having those results, there'll be a comparison
Mhm.
and an up or down decision by council if we
Right.
move forward with a supplier. So,
Right.
so it sounds like really their decision point, other than maybe telling you, yes, timing wise, we need to start this investigation and gather that,
Mhm.
that pricing data. Really their decision point is April 28th is where you're thinking you'll have all that data prepared for them.
Yeah, there might be a few days after that, but I would target the 28th, and I think it's that Friday. I think it's a Friday, the last day. So how we want to, and because going back to what I said before, this is a financial product, so it's traded, hourly. Sure. Markets closed. We just have to figure out too how, once we determine if it is something we want to move forward with, how we involve council. There's two ways. One way is we do the analytics and say, okay, it looks good, and we can get, there's going to be savings there. We'll go back to the winning supplier and we'll say, give us an update. We'll need to get approval from council saying you can move forward so long as the price doesn't exceed X, and we can determine what that is prior to. That gives us a little, because the market will be different from when we get the results to moving forward. Or the other one is we ask the supplier to hold the rate a night of a council meeting, and there'll be a premium kind of built in there because the market will be closed and they're just going to wear that risk that when the market opens. That's another option that we have as well.
So their second meeting this month is the 19th, which won't work.
Yeah.
So then we're talking about May 3rd.
May 3rd would be the soonest. Okay.
Yeah.
And what I can do is that's just an ask of each supplier saying, okay, we're May 3rd. How comfortable are you with trying to hit it July? I'll have to have that conversation when I send out pricing requests, because I need to know what start date we want to use.
A bit of an envelope for them. Okay.
Yeah. So. So May 3rd would be the target to have everything ready to go from the council. Okay.
My advice to you would be, you're not making a final decision until May 3rd, but you need, I think it's good to have Scioto Energy start to gather that data so that one, the clock doesn't continue to tick, and two, they can have something prepared for you that will be timely in terms of getting it done during the high use period of the summer.
And we're
And
not
it'll
making a
actually-
commitment
will
until May
actually-
3rd.
If the market does bear out, as you say, people should be very happy. They'll get one bill that'll show 10 cents, and then they might get another bill that says 7.5 or 7 or something like that. So they'll see that
If it goes into effect on July 1st, then it would be your August bill that you would see a difference,
Yeah,
or
you'll see it in August, yeah, because it's
Okay.
on the meter reads, the cycles in July, that's when they start, so when they read the meter in August, that's when they would get the bill.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
well, I'm very interested in hearing back on May 3rd, because if we could do something to save our residents money, then I'm interested in learning about it.
I think it'll be, again, the market's always bounce around, but I think there's gonna be, looking back at the last decade or so, when it got really, really tight, this is an opportunity that there truly is significant value, for the end user. Not a lot of risk on the officials and making a decision on their behalf as far as that getting upside down. That's always the concern, that you lock into a rate and now the utilities gets cheaper. But again, even in that scenario, we always negotiate with the suppliers that any ratepayer can terminate, that's participating, they can terminate at any time with no exit fee or anything like that. But it's just good to know that your timing is good, and that you're in a spot that you're going to be able to demonstrate value very quickly for these folks. Again, so long as we don't have a geopolitical event between now and May 3rd. So what I would suggest is, a lot of this I can do behind the scenes to start getting things going, kick off. I can gather the data, get that set up. I can send out the RFP to get the bids back in. That should take maybe 10 business days from start to finish. And then from there, we can determine what's the best way for me to communicate the results and talk about it. And then determine, do we want to move forward and present something to council? I think is what I would say we do, if you guys are okay with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it'd probably give us the opportunity in between that time to at least involve a couple members in showing,
Yeah.
here's the results, here's what we're thinking. And,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we can even do small groups of a couple members to brief them. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's all about the education level and just being comfortable. That's the bottom line. Obviously, I've been doing this a long time, so it's really making sure you guys understand it and feel comfortable moving forward. So,
I guess what happens if the rates drop again?
so if the rates, the utilities rates will typically adjust every year to the auction process. So that there's not a lot of movement. I mean, we're saying 10 cents, it might go up to 10.2, it could drop to 9.8 just over the course of the next 12 months, starting in June. But if a customer would ever want that's participating in the program, if they want to get out, they can terminate at any point in time. They can either go back to the utility or they can pick up another supplier. Again, they find somebody that they feel comfortable with and maybe has a better rate for whatever reason, they can do that. We don't want to pin anybody in, forcing them down this path and making that they have to participate in this program.
So the customer, meaning the resident, can drop out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the ratepayer.
But if approved by council, all of Sunbury will be put into it, and then they would opt out,
Right,
and we would have communication.
yeah.
What would make someone not eligible
So
in Sunbury?
typically what they'll look at, can't be an account, commercial account that's over 700,000 kilowatt hours. So it has to be below that. And that's a decent sized user. That's usually somebody that's running 2 shifts, or more. They're going to be too large. They're doing their own thing. They're out. And then they'll look at all the residential accounts that are with ADP, and they'll pull out the ones that are already with a supplier, because they're basically separated by rate code. You can look at rate code and you can determine, well, this guy's with somebody, this one isn't. And so the utility will pull out everybody that cannot participate based on the rules. And they say, here's the final list that you have. And that's what they use for pricing, and that's what they'll use. They'll have to update it, the winter will, right before they do start the enrollments. So yeah, nobody gets swept in. Not everybody gets swept in, just the qualifying participants.
And they'll get a notice of an opt-out
Yep,
option.
they'll get a letter from the supplier, and it'll have, Sunbury's logo on it as well. I'll talk about the program when it starts, what the rate is, who they can call if they have questions. Typically these suppliers have a call room, and they know, each number will be assigned to each community. They can email, and probably what we would do is also want to put something on the webpage, the city's webpage, just talking about the program real quick, so they know.
And I think I heard correctly. That's why I'm going to ask this question. You also said that the contract we would negotiate, or you would negotiate on our behalf, would have kind of a rolling opt-out option, that if they got 6 months into the program,
And then
they saw an advantage to move, or they were like, I want to become pure green energy, and we're offering them a mix, then they could still opt out without penalty.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let's make this easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. Anything else?
You had mentioned at the start, natural gas as well. Is there
Oh,
anything
yes.
to review there?
Natural gas. So my take on natural gas is similar to what it used to be on electric. I don't think it's worth the risk. The way Columbia Gas purchases its natural gas, similar in a way to what the utility does. So they no longer own the assets. They have to go out and hold an auction. But typically what they'll do is the suppliers are bidding on what's called an index. So they have an adder that they add in, and then whatever the monthly rate is that settles out for natural gas, that's the cost. So your ability to show savings consistently is pretty hard to do. It's very, because then you're just negotiating and the adder piece.
Mhm.
I personally don't think the risk is worth it. There's just not much there. Now we can see we're coming out of the winter time right now. March was the last winter month. So now we're trying to see how much storage is left. Natural gas is being replenished. Maybe when we get through the summer, early fall, right before, residents will start picking up and using natural gas, which is typically in November. We can take a look at it again, but traditionally, I just don't think it's worth going down that path.
In my experience, natural gas has been the one where I've had people come to a council meeting and go, here's my bill, here's what I could have paid. Why did you guys do this?
Yeah.
I haven't heard it with electric, but I have heard it with natural gas.
Yeah, it's
Not here, but other communities.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Yep. Yeah. I've never really been comfortable with that at all. It's just
Yeah.
too thin line to play. And and if it gets messed up, you don't have, typically residential users use it between November and March. And you can't make up for any losses that you have in those outer months because there's no usage. So with this, it's risky. We could talk about it, but if asked today, I say no. Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks
that.
for bringing
Yeah,
that up.
thank you.
Yeah. What's the, have we had a history of natural gas aggregation programs? I thought I remembered talking about it in the past at some point, but I don't remember specifically.
I think volunteer
There
might have been doing
A
both.
lot of aggregation program, yeah. Local company that's unfortunately not around anymore, but yeah. They used to do it a lot. So
No, that was me. Yeah. I got the world's strongest auto alarm.
That was you?
But it's far enough that you would think there's no way that should happen.
Love it.
Well, thank you, Greg,
Thank you.
for presenting tonight. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you made it simpler than
I tried. I appreciate the comments. Thank you guys.
So I would think going forward, you would communicate with Daryl. You want to be on the.
You'll keep me involved and my times. But I'll be here when you're making that decision still, so yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
have a good night. All right. Next up on the agenda is unfinished business, and woo boy, is this unfinished business. Sunbury Estates trees.
Yeah, so we've included from Barry his extensive amount of research that he did. I would urge you to take some time to read that. It echoes many of the things that I've mentioned before in terms of sidewalk meanders, undermining roots as an option, the themes of the right tree in the right place and providing them with room either through a sidewalk meander or reclaiming some space for the tree. We really don't have that option in a tree lawn, unfortunately. There were a couple ideas in there that I hadn't heard before, which was the idea of using asphalt because it's more pliable. And then you come over with an epoxy coating that makes it kind of look like concrete. I thought that was an intriguing idea. And they also had some data in here about a more substantial way to, using a geofabric, putting in more gravel under the sidewalk than using some geofabric to kind of spread that root pressure out more. A lot of what we get is just right at the edge, which is, I think this would help some, but it's not going to help a great deal. But I think it's worth you reading that. And if you want, I did have the ODNR urban forester here, like Damon said, a year and a half ago, to look at specifically Sunbury Meadows. We do have a new urban forester. I've corresponded with him on Tree City things, but never had the formal personal introduction. I could invite him to come up and have him walk it with Daryl so that you've got some continuity of knowledge of the issue, and have yet another professional set of eyes look at it. Her recommendations before were please save the trees, use sidewalk meanders, use undercutting. You basically take the root, you get under it, you put some pea gravel under it so that the root can kind of settle down a little bit, come away, lower it so it's not pushing right up against the sidewalk. He may have some other ideas, so certainly willing to do that. I know that's still kind of kicking the can a little bit, but I definitely think it's worth taking the time to read the very extensive amount of materials that Barry assembled for you. Again, ultimately, you got to have the right tree in the right place. I don't know that those trees are the right trees to be where they are. I think we can minimize the impact a little bit, buy some time, cut the worst pieces, re-slope them, do some things. But in a way, I'd really like to see if he's got a wholly different way of looking at this that I haven't heard before. And I'm certainly willing to reach out to him and get that scheduled so that this time in May, we'll have a full report from him and some more suggestions on how to proceed.
I think that would be great. You mentioned buying some time, and that's my biggest question. It sounds like these were obviously the wrong trees for the job. So are we just, again, kicking the can down the road? Are we going to see damage to the curb? Are they going to be growing into storm drains? Do we have a bigger issue coming with these trees that might necessitate a removal at some point?
Potentially, yes. I think that's a good question for him. Most of that subdivision should be in plastic pipe, which is a lot more resistant to roots than like a concrete or a clay pipe. You still have the issue of the of the curb maybe getting pushed around some. Um, but it may be, you may want to consider treating, doing some different approaches on one street to see if it actually has an impact before fully going back and doing the whole neighborhood that way, or realizing, as you said, we're just kicking that can down the road. We've got to take the hit on the trees need to come out. We need to get a proper tree that will drive a root down, as opposed to the ones there that like to drive them out parallel to the ground. And but in the least, I think maybe taking a couple test areas and trying a few of these approaches and seeing if the same problem emerges might be worth the effort, as opposed to losing all those trees.
The other component is community outreach, of course. So once we get some options in hand, I still think it's important for us to meet with the residents in the area and see what their thoughts are. Maybe not necessarily take a vote and go, but especially, I know if somebody told me they wanted to meander the sidewalk in front of my house, I'd probably not be a big fan of that, but the consensus might be a more positive one.
I think it's definitely worth having that conversation with them and laying out all these different options, and ultimately saying, right now, the way our ordinance is written, you're responsible for the sidewalk. And, there's a couple of different ways that we could go about doing this, trying to solve the sidewalk tree issue in your neighborhood. And it won't be as fun as having a J.R. Smith Park open house, but it's probably very, I think that's a way to deal with that and get some graphics of what a meander looks like and what undermining a root so that it settles looks like, and maybe what asphalt sidewalks look like. And
I'm interested in that.
that one
never heard of
intrigued
that.
me, because that was the first time I'd actually read that option in all the, and I'd spent some time looking at this stuff too, but Barry's obviously a very good data miner.
Did you say, so did Barry Bennett find this?
Yes.
Okay, because I misunderstood. I wasn't sure what Barry came into it.
He probably
He
did
found
like
this
a
data.
leaf on it and stuff, if memory serves. The actual
Yeah,
packet had like 3 clippings in it. It was in depth. It was really, yeah.
And I think, like on page 7, he's got a highlight there. It says avoid planting shallow rooted tree species near sidewalks. Red maple is highlighted because that was the leaf that he found, and he was able to taxonomy the tree to that specific thing. So that gets it. We've got the wrong tree in the wrong spot, but are there ways that we can maybe ameliorate that situation without totally taking them out?
Is there just a section in Sunbury Meadows, or is this a pretty big problem?
I think it's the same trees. It's not the meadows, it's
Sunbury
Estates.
Estates.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
Tim's.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's,
Tim's name.
Oh, gosh, this has been going on.
it is
They're
unique.
just now big enough to really start. It was 2 falls ago, I think, that they were doing severe damage to the sidewalk and causing. Do we still have safety issues in the sidewalks there? Or
Yes, we haven't
hadn't-
sliced them yet.
okay,
One, we hadn't budgeted the money, plus we haven't, that will solve the problem on a short term potentially, but before you invest the money in that, you really need to decide about the trees.
and
Is
this
it a
came
big section
part-
of the estates?
It's the entire, it's a monoculture. That's all, they're all red maples.
Okay.
And if you go back there, let's see, I can resend it out. We had a trip survey done, you know, where they look at the offset of the sidewalks and they did a map for us of all the locations, but it's quite a few.
So do we have this list now? Like, this is something that we can use in the future, so we're not planting these trees again?
We do have within our tree commission, they passed a list of trees that can't be planted anywhere, trees that can't be planted in the tree lawn, and trees that should not be planted in public spaces.
What about trees near sidewalks?
Well, if it's on the private side, they could potentially plant it, because it's, you know, they're.
But on our side, so that we don't do
But our
this
side,
again
yes,
in
we've got
Rolling
that.
Hills and
Mhm.
Now,
et cetera.
We've got that. The other thing that we've done in the newer subdivisions is we're moving away from street trees in the tree lawn and moving them into the yards. And I think they have to be a minimum of 5 feet away from the sidewalk. So we're giving them a lot more room. You know, we're learning.
tree in the front yard is easier to handle than a tree in the tree lawn.
Yeah.
Regardless. This topic came up literally a couple months after we had the issue with the blight in the trees in the mills.
Oh, I remember.
So, yeah, there was a lot of back and forth on that. And I think that might even be part of the reason why we didn't act super fast on the estates. Yeah, because we had to rip out a lot of trees
Yeah.
that year.
If you start thinking of other municipalities, most of them, at least from what I see, have brick. They put the brick around, because it seems like it's a cheaper maintenance. Like if you go down to Westerville, you walk in uptown, the brick. Downtown in Columbus, there's some brick around trees. Because the maintenance, once it's a paver, comes out even, you can go through it, either dig around it, move around it, and put it back in.
And it's permeable. Water can get down to the tree through it.
Yeah, I think it looks good. It kind of goes along with the brick at the square and.
That might be. Right now, the developers are okay with we don't want trees in the tree lawn, we want them in the lawns, but I think if we
tree
started
lawn.
to ask them to create planting
Space
pods,
between
they
the
might go,
sidewalk and the curb.
that's a little cost prohibitive.
Most of the
So
new
in the-
developments
in the-
don't.
If we ask them to do that kind of a planting pod
Or
in a
or
neighborhood,
does your property?
They might
roll
come
in
back
the
and
street?
comment that it's,
To the sidewalk.
we've
So
really
it's
hit a point
technically
of
in the
cost
right of way,
prohibitiveness at that point.
Ordinance if the tree damages the sidewalk,
It's
the
the residents.
homeowner's liable. Now, we haven't.
Over
acted on
time
that
though,
yet.
like in my neighborhood, the front, that tree, my sidewalk is all busted up. Cause my home is was much older, so, okay.
All right, look forward to seeing recommendations on that.
Okay. That'll be
If you
my
let me know when you're doing the walkthrough over there and I'm able to go, I will absolutely join
We'll
in.
read this. We'll read this, that
I will
very,
definitely read it. Yeah, wanna. not
Yeah, and you
leave
can tell
Barry
you-
hanging like that.
Even if you just clue into the pictures and read the parts with the pictures, it'll give you a pretty good
That's
overview of
books.
what's going on.
Lots
Yeah.
of pictures. Okay, new business, we have town center planning. We had a scoping meeting, that we had mentioned, I think two council meetings ago, I forget exactly when it was brought up, but we wanted to nail down which, projects would fall under the purview of which committee.
Mhm.
So what services would manage and what parks would manage. And it came down during the meeting. I told Daryl yesterday when I was talking to him, it was the least surprising meeting I'd ever sat in because it was exactly kind of what I thought. The breakdown should be where, parks has the parks and the paths, and what am I forgetting there? And streets has the streets and the parking lots. And It made sense. I think the
No
one,
overreach.
no overreach there. I know that at one point in time, we had a contractor add on to the streets program to do the Fallen Heroes Trail. So I wanted clarity on that, and I'm trying to think of what the other. I think there was some question about who had parking lots. But I think that makes sense to fall under streets. Yeah. So, was there anything to add to that? That's my like high level. This was a month ago and I barely remember it. Notes.
No, I think that's even better than I did with parks. Dan and I kind of looked at each other, and went, okay, what do we say about this? So, yeah, I think that is a logical division of this, as long as ultimately it ends up into some coherency, so that I think that's what your paid staff's there for, is to make sure that one doesn't go one way and one doesn't go another. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not out there paving the parking lots, so.
well, I mean, even just as the planning process
Yeah.
proceeds, that
Mhm.
you guys come up with the idea of throwing a parking lot somewhere where they want to have a park, or a multi-level parking lot or something like that. So,
Then do you want to touch on the community project fund? I'm not
I can't.
familiar with that.
Actually, it's fairly good news. CT hustled and got a nice project summary together that we were able to then present to MORPC to get a letter from them of support, which then led to the mayor providing to our US representative a request for what is essentially what they used to call earmarks, but as they write up funding bills, sometimes they will specifically say that out of this multi-millions, hundreds of millions that's going through the Federal Highway Administration, we want this amount to go to Sunbury to widen and fix and get a crossing over 36, 37 for the Ohio Erie Trail. So,
Very exciting.
Mhm.
We saw Mr. Balderson at the MORPC event on Friday, and we got to personally thank him for all the work that he's been doing and pushing this in Sunbury. So it's pretty exciting. Especially since we were well, you guys weren't there, but we were at the parks meeting last month. I had stood up and encouraged them to be looking at how to help folks over on that side of town. So this is just exciting.
Yeah, it's good news. Then we're on to 2023 street project.
So we have started putting together the bid package, and we can put it out to bid. It'll probably take 6 to 8 weeks to get to that point, maybe a little less, but we can't spend the money until July. So we can select the contractor, but I don't believe we can award the contract even until then, and then you award the contract, then you start paying them. But we're in the process of putting that together with partial money from the Ohio Public Works Commission.
So I know that we're kind of in a hurry for this too, right? We're trying to target it being completed by school.
Correct.
Starting in August, right?
Right.
So does getting the contractor selected earlier mean we can get on their docket earlier?
Well, it means we'll get better pricing, but it's not, there's no benefit to getting on their docket earlier because we can't release them to go until Ohio Public Works Commission allows us. So it will be running close
Okay.
because of the funding source.
Is there anything you need from us tonight?
No, sir.
What's that?
you've already authorized.
Right.
Bidding, so.
Okay. Then on to thoroughfare and traffic control planning.
Yes, Mr. Bob Keederly from our office had been working with
with Wes, and some of this was myself as well, but there's a Sunbury traffic update in your packet, at the end of the packet there, and I think I'll just go through that. It hits on those two items plus those three items plus a couple other ones. Bob is working to put together a full ITS, which is Intelligent Transportation System. And that would be pretty, not pretty, it's a very robust system, includes controllers, fiber optic communication, vehicle detections, remote sensing, and the coolest thing is the adaptive controls that well, number one, you could just be just like this. You can sit in an office and look at the traffic through the CCTV cameras. But also the software has the ability to automatically change signal timing. Like if you're at a light and there's nobody at the other light, but it's green, it'll go ahead and, kick the phasing in to allow the busy route to travel. Those sorts of things, which is obviously a huge advantage. It has a lot of advantages, obviously safety, traffic efficiency, and in one sense, an economic development thing. In today's world, sustainability and green infrastructure it really scores well for points on these funding applications, and this does do that. I mean, the fact that it improves traffic, reduces the carbon emissions, and those sorts of things. So we can claim that with it. That system's underway. Sticker shock, you ready? The cost will be about $2.2 million for that. We can obviously phase it, but ODOT will probably trim it down, but I think Bob thinks we can get some money to fund a good bit of it. So that's a good thing.
And this is for a specific area?
The whole city.
This is the whole city?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure there's one or two that may not warrant having that done to them, but we'll start at the major intersections and work our way down.
Okay.
Sort of cherry pick. But you do want to tie the entire system together ultimately.
Okay.
And Bob, there was a Heartland Meadows, the discussion about parking on Heartland Meadows and around the elementary school. And Bob has looked at that. As I said, CT has looked at that and has developed some recommendations for changing signage, changing some of the lane marking, lane striping to make it clear and allow for better flow on that street and fix the problems that are out there. And he has got there's an exhibit in your packet as well. Cherry and Granville and Straight Route 3 are issues that he is working on, and I honestly don't know. This is the first I found of it was today. I didn't know I was doing this meeting until this morning, so I'm sorry if I don't have full detail on everything.
Lucky you. Another meeting.
Yeah. And then also he had looked at, you see there, Cherry Street dual eastbound on left onto State Route 3. He's looking at an idea of improving that intersection by using, I don't know if you go through the point in Delaware where they encourage you to meter yourself into the lanes as you go in. And if traffic driver behavior actually reflects that, which doesn't always.
I've never seen it work. I'd love to, but I've never seen it.
Well, the idea is to do that, and occasionally see it work. And eventually, if it's an area where there's a lot of residents that commonly go through, they'll hopefully figure it out and do that. But there's, from a cost standpoint and efficiency standpoint, that's a pretty solid solution.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to skip down to the Sunbury Meadows Drive speed evaluation. I presented on that one at the last meeting. We talked about the fact that the speed is well within the 85th percentile, which by engineering standards does not warrant putting in any features. However, I think we all understand that it would be a good thing to do that anyway. There's nothing keeping us from doing that. So we're finalizing this report. I put in the back of it some information on accomplishing traffic calming by way of several methods, and we can use any of those methods The one is a chicane, which is a bump out, which is a traffic bump out on, with a curb on either side of the road. It kind of makes you channel your way in. Another is reflective striping down the center, which, just has that perceptive look to keep you, makes it seem like you got less of a racetrack to travel on. Then putting bike lanes and parking in, those are all options that are being looked at. And we'll take some time. This is also right where those apartments are going in on part of it. So we want to make sure we handle that appropriately. You may not want to jump the gun on that. What I've done in other communities, and Bill Farino and City of Delaware has done it. We did it in Worthington when I was there, is to kind of test this idea out. It's not a perfect test, but you can paint. Do island painting, do chicane painting, paint around some of the intersections with reflective painting that shows in all weather and light conditions. But that is a way to kind of test it. It's a trial of that, of whether it'll work or not. And I will certainly recommend that, assuming that it's something that makes sense to you all. That way we can not spend a lot of money on one area that we don't know for sure will work, but we can do some experimentation and try
I
to.
think you shared you guys did this in Delaware somewhere and you found that it wasn't the right spot the first
Right,
time. So it was
right.
really beneficial. But it was
Exactly.
just a temporary.
That's exactly right. It doesn't obviously have the same effect, but it does have an effect.
I never thought that about how that road doesn't have that yellow striping. And it just feels like you can just go all the way down.
It's something about that visual appearance
Yeah.
because Sudbury Meadows going down to the west on the west
doesn't-
side, people fly
Yeah.
down through there, just fly, and you're right in front of people's houses.
Yeah.
But
There's no yellow stripe in your.
well, it's just such a wide
It's
road.
so wide.
You've got parking on both sides and 2 full lanes down the
Mhm.
middle still, so.
And that is what you said, the perception is really what traffic calming is. So sometimes it's hardscape features, but it's really trying to make it seem like you've got a narrower lane to travel in. If you go in Worthington, you see on West Wilson Bridge Road where the buildings are tucked up close to the road wasn't changed, but that drastically affected the speed of the traffic by those areas because they felt like they were going, it sort of tunnelizes it. It looks really good. It doesn't look like it's tunnelized, but it takes you to kind of calm you as you're traveling along. You feel more constricted.
Yeah.
That's the fun report.
Appreciate it.
Very
Sure.
cool. I think this is gonna hopefully be welcomed by the residents over there.
Hopefully so. We have 7 minutes. Is that enough time for wastewater treatment?
So it is for me.
To install.
It is for me.
Okay.
Really, we filed for the permit to install for the wastewater treatment plant extension. That was us in 7 minutes, right? We got Steve to sign it. We sent it in, sent the check. It usually takes a little bit of time to get that back, but it is not a huge permitting deal.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Does anybody have anything else for good of the group? I will make a motion to adjourn. Second by Mr. Neff. Roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.